to 1981, Atlanta, Georgia was terrorized by an unseen menace. African-American children were disappearing and being found murdered. In 1982, after the arrest and conviction of Wayne Williams, the majority of the cases of the murdered children were closed. But what most people don't realize is that Wayne Williams was only convicted for the murder of 2 adult men, never for any of the children. 40 years later, people still wonder, did Wayne Williams do it?
I know for a fact he did not kill my daughter.
There are many who believe that the perpetrators of these crimes still walk free. Some believe it was a ring of sexual predators. Others believe it was the KKK. And then there are even more remarkable theories.
Why take my children's organs?
In an exclusive interview with a spokesman for Wayne Williams,
he didn't do what he's accused of.
We examined 6 of the theories that circulate around the Atlanta child murders. In 1979, Atlanta was enjoying a renaissance.
This is just over 10 years after the murder of Dr. King. Atlanta and a lot of other cities throughout the country, but especially throughout the South, were just figuring out their race relations. It was a time that felt very progressive.
When black children began to show up dead, that progress seemed to halt.
It put the city on the brink of a real racial catastrophe.
When Wayne Williams was arrested, beleaguered Atlantans let out a sigh of relief. Although Williams was not charged with the murders of the 23 children, the conventional wisdom was he was responsible.
I think that at that time, Atlanta needed this to go away.
But many in the community were not happy with this easy answer.
It was challenging for the community to accept it because you did not have the supporting evidence for all these other murders.
The evidence does not tie in with the younger ones. It does not. I don't believe that Wayne Williams killed all the children. I know for a fact he did not kill my daughters. I know for a fact he did not kill my daughters. I know for a fact he did not kill my daughter.
You walk around Atlanta even today, you find somebody that's 40 years or older, they got an opinion. Part of the reason is because there are so many conspiracy theories that float around. I think a lot of the things that people think are conspiracy theories, they're really realities.
Dwayne Hendricks met Wayne Williams in 2013 while trying to do a documentary on Williams.
A guy who I grew up with was in the same prison with Wayne. He goes, I'm locked up with Wayne Williams. And he's been looking for someone to do his documentary. He said, is that something you'd be interested in? And I was like, hell yeah.
Since then, Dwayne has become Wayne's liaison to the outside world. Dwayne is convinced of Wayne's innocence.
There were multiple murderers. It wasn't one person. It wasn't one group. It wasn't one conspiracy that was attached to all of this.
So which conspiracy theories are circulating?
If you grew up in the South, you knew about the KKK. Word was you never know who's in the Ku Klux Klan. If you're not careful, they'll come and get you at night. A lot of the Klan activity had been pushed to the fringes, which a lot of people felt made them more dangerous. Now, in theory, I'm going to school with their kids. I don't mean a threat like these are people that don't like you, that may be mean to you. I mean a threat that these are people that will kill you.
In the black community, we're thinking that the Klansmen had a lot to do with it. We couldn't think of anything but the Klansmen.
In particular, a man named Charles Sanders is thought to have been responsible for the death of Lubie Jeter.
The name that people know is Charles Sanders.
Charles Sanders, who was associated with the white hate group, maybe even the Klan.
Allegedly, Sanders was angry because Jeter had scratched Sanders' truck. A 1986 Spin magazine article quoted a police informant who said he was with Sanders when Sanders saw Jeter and remarked, "See that black bastard? I'm going to get him. I'm going to choke the black bastard to death."
It is alleged that Sanders had threatened to kill Jeter. Jeter was subsequently found dead.
Not only did he say that they killed Lubie Jeter, that they killed more children and that they were going to start killing little girls as well.
So what happened? Why wasn't Sanders prosecuted? Authorities said they had no evidence connecting Sanders or the KKK to any of the murders. Dwayne Hendricks believes the authorities suppressed the evidence to protect Sanders.
You had guys that were police officers that were KKK. You had people that were firemen that were KKK. You have certain orders from your KKK superiors. You don't share vital investigative work that I may need to solve this murder.
While the allegations against the KKK never led to any convictions, another sinister group was also under suspicion.
There was some belief that there was some sort of sexual aspect to these murders, some sort of a pedophilia ring.
That's not a theory. That's a reality.
For years, it has been believed that Uncle Tom Terrell, a known sex offender who lived in the area where most of the murders were committed, was responsible for some of the deaths.
Tom Terrell was one of these folks that supposedly ran in a lot of groups that were involving kids in trafficking.
They called his home Uncle Tom's Cabin. He's on news footage openly admitting that the little boys were at his house. The little boys that disappeared and were found murdered. He's openly admitting this.
And then there's the case of Clifford Jones. Some believe that he died at the hands of another sex offender, Jamie Brooks. Clifford Jones's brother, Emmanuel Williams, backs up the theory that Jamie Brooks was responsible.
These people had kidnapped my brother, a man named Jamie Brooks. These guys held my brother captive in a laundromat, and they raped him and beat him all day long. One of the people stood in the doorway watching my brother get raped, crying, screaming, saying he wanted to go home and saying that he was going to tell his grandmother, and said that the dude, Jamie Brooks, put a rope around his neck and pulled on the rope. Clifford was 12 years old. It breaks my heart. I feel like the police, they didn't really care. They waited 2 years to even question Jamie Brooks.
Brooks was never officially tied to the murder of Clifford Jones. Jones is among the children connected to Wayne Williams. Unlike Williams, however, Brooks was convicted of a child-related offense.
Jamie Brooks ended up going to prison for another child sex crime and died in prison of AIDS.
Not everyone accepts the pedophile theory.
Well, if you wanted a scapegoat, these would be the people. If you wanted a scapegoat, these would be the people. If you wanted a scapegoat, these would be the people.
When the evidence came out about the examining of the bodies, they didn't find evidence that there was any kind of sexual activity.
The case is governed by evidence. Prosecutors weren't about to accuse somebody of killing because they've committed some other crime or because they're not a good person.
While the children bore no signs of sexual assault, some of the bodies found were missing organs. This has led some of the victims' families to allege that someone was killing the children to harvest their organs.
Different parts of their children's organs was removed. You talk about the kidneys, the liver, the peanuts. Why take my children's organs? It's very important that the world know that it was like robbing organs here in Atlanta.
This theory was popularized by Dick Gregory, a comedian and activist who had become obsessed with the Atlanta child murders.
It's a thing called interferon. It sells for about $19 billion a pint, and you can't make it. It comes out of male. You put the hypodermic needle up around the testicles. So they was taking jail, prison inmates in the early 60s. And when you do it, you die. You pull it all out and you die. And the way they was covering it up, they was faking jail, prison rides. Well, they found out that they wasn't getting a good quality because a lot of the prison inmates, they had been abusing their body, alcohol, drugs, caffeine, staying up all night, and they was getting a poor quality. So then they decided, well, we got to get a younger group. Where can we find it? Let's go into the black ghetto, and if we go in the ghetto, don't nobody care. So then a strange thing happened. When they would find the bodies, many of them had deteriorated, but many of them they said they could find like aggravation around the penis, like hypodermic needles. Now, when this got out through the community, because of slavery and what black men went through, everybody thought it was castration. And immediately they started talking about maybe the Klan is doing it. But that's not what it was. And the next thing, it was history. I mean, Wayne Williams was framed. And I'll be honest, I am shocked that they didn't mysteriously kill him in jail. Pray that the truth come out on this one.
The late comedian Dick Gregory alluded to some conspiracy with the CDC appropriating these kids' bodies for their DNA.
The Center for Disease Control, which is headquartered in Atlanta, had some kind of survey going on. Some people thought this was some kind of plot by the Center of Disease Control to kill these young boys.
According to this theory, the perpetrators harvested the sexual organs of the young men.
One of the mothers that I've interviewed, she sat in front of me and cried, tears. I saw hypodermic needle marks in the genital areas of these children.
I know all about the experiment. You tell me why are hypodermic needle marks on both sides of the boys' penises. Dick Gregory and I met with a scientist. A lot of things was explained to us. Showed me how one thing taken from a child at a certain age before puberty could wipe out cancer.
This thing is a protein called interferon. Interferon is now used to fight cancer.
And now, in 2019, if you go Google interferon, you're going to find out that it's used in cancer medication.
Somebody has to account for why those marks were there.
The CDC isn't the only government agency that has been implicated in the Atlanta child murders. Wayne even goes so far as to suggest that the CIA was involved. He builds this claim on top of another claim that he, as a young man, was recruited by the CIA for secret missions.
He was recruited into the CIA Junior Officers Program, and he went on 2 missions. He saw 2 villages in Africa wiped out. Women, children, all dead. He still to this day doesn't know if that was experimentation with a chemical biological weapon or experimentation with the HIV virus. That's when he came back. He said, I don't want no parts of this.
Wayne claims that the CIA was upset with his leaving the exclusive program. As retribution, they were involved in publicly pinning the Atlanta child murders on him.
People told him that he would regret it.
Other than Wayne's story, there is no evidence to support this theory.
You know, it's flight of fancy kind of commentary. There's just enough history of people being framed, especially black suspects being framed, being wrongly convicted. Then the more you listen, the more you think, well, maybe not.
If the murders weren't perpetrated by the KKK, child predators, or the CIA, could it have been a serial killer? Prolific killer Edward Edwards was caught in Atlanta just after Wayne was arrested, and the child murders had peaked. A master of deception, Edwards was alleged to have connections to Georgia law enforcement.
He was a GBI informant. He was known to take hair fibers, DNA samples. He was known to even have sex with men to be able to get DNA, to be able to pin crimes on other people. And he operated for over 50 years.
While it's true that Edwards was in Atlanta during the time of the murders, and that Edwards was a con man who cozied up to Georgia law enforcement, there is no evidence to tie Edwards to any of the Atlanta child murders. Finally, there is a theory that a killer is being kept safe by his family's money. Venus Taylor claims that a member of law enforcement confided in her about the real killer of her daughter, Angel Lanier.
The person that killed your daughter told me that he killed her. I say, and you're not gonna arrest him? He said, we really can't. I said, why you can't? Because he's mentally ill. I said, just because he's mentally ill, you're not gonna arrest him? He said, well, he said, it's a little more political than that. I say, what you mean? He's from one of the richest families in this city. Money talks. He said that it'll never go to court. It is 30-some years later, and that hurts. That hurts real bad, knowing that, you know, money is power and it keeps you out of jail.
With all of these theories muddying the water, is it possible that the truth will ever emerge?
The question does come up frequently, did Wayne Williams act alone? The only person against whom there is enough evidence to convict of these offenses is Wayne Williams. You know, in some cases, I think, you know, there was someone with Wayne that may never have enough evidence to show who it was.
The murders remain a stain on Atlanta and America. The victims' families continue to seek answers.
Does anybody remember these victims? And the answer is not very much. They remember Wayne Williams, but they don't remember these kids.
The near invisibility of these young victims has an echo in today's marginalized communities.
The story might be 40 years old, but in some ways, it's more relevant than ever before. These were Americans that were murdered, you know? And American families that were affected. There's a hole in our heart as a country because of this travesty that happened. So you need to care about this. Injustice for black and brown children is still happening at a high rate. 40 years later, some things have not changed. And if we're not careful and we're cavalier about it, it could happen again.
How you doing, Chief? Easy. Wouldn't want our little friend here to wind up on the back of a milk cart now, would we? Look at them. They're cattle. Pieces of meat. What difference does it make how their world ends? Plague, war, famine. Morality doesn't even enter into it. We're just a function of natural selection.